Daily Wire Plus launches, but does the plus mean woke? The Daily Wire hosted their Backstage Live event recently and announced that they were launching Daily Wire Plus. And among other things, Daily Wire Plus includes a backlog of Jordan Peterson lectures as well as his podcast. And a recent podcast episode has people in a bit of a buzz. Jordan Peterson released an episode recently with Dave Rubin called Gay Parenting, Promise, and Pitfalls. Now that promise part is the really difficult part for a lot of people, and Marcus Pittman had this to say about this particular episode on the new Daily Wire Plus. Marcus Pittman says, "It really frustrates me to see the Daily Wire pushing two-father parenting with Dave Rubin, while at the same time claiming that the Daily Wire Plus is not woke. It's infuriating, actually. We've demanded boycotts of Disney for the same thing. How are they different? At least the cartoons made by Disney are not real people. I'm not sure what they are thinking. I really don't. It's maddening and it pisses me off. Are they lying about it or just completely obtuse? I think they are too smart to be obtuse. That's what scares me. The Daily Wire is not on your side. They just are not. It's tragic. I'm more passionate than ever for lore to succeed, and when we close our round, my first purchase will probably be a dartboard for my office with Jeremy Boring's face on it." So passionate words from Marcus Pittman. Now, Marcus Pittman, I did a little research, is one of the creators of a platform called Lore, and Lore is a funding platform, and the way that they describe themselves is literally this: entertainment unfiltered by Hollywood or church ladies. Why should out-of-touch Hollywood executives spend your subscription money on content you hate? With Lore, you can fund the new movies and TV shows that you want to see. So essentially, it's a crowdfunding platform with a little bit more of an agenda, or you could say purpose, than your average crowdfunding platform. Specifically, they say to fight in the culture war. Now, this is something that I think is warranted that we talk about, because I've been talking about this for the last couple of weeks, especially with the Roe v. Wade news and political climates just at an all-time polarization level. We have seen so much more of this fight the culture war type of talk from conservatives especially. And I really, really wish it would stop. I really think this is unhelpful for us as Americans. I think it's really unhelpful for us as Christians to start viewing everything as a culture war. And now I'm going to defend the Daily Wire in this episode, but I do have a problem with them, and I mentioned it a couple of episodes ago. While we tend to align on a lot of our values, the way in which they tend to paint those that oppose their values, I really have a hard time with. I disagree with this whole left-right dichotomy, and I understand that if you want people to rally behind you, you need to start a movement around a common enemy. I understand why people do that. You know, if you watch the Daily Wire, they're constantly lampooning the left, and the left is constantly lampooning the right. But the problem I have with this, again, there is no left and there is no right. There's just people. There are people who lean more right. There are people who lean more left ideologically. And once we start painting people strictly by their ideology, they start to lose their humanity. And that's dangerous. The Holocaust was based on that. Hitler had an ideology. And the people that opposed that ideology or that didn't meet up with that ideology were his enemies and the enemies of his whole framework for life, his whole framework for his worldview. They were the enemy, and he got a whole country behind him because he painted his ideology as correct and right, and everyone who opposed it as completely wrong, insane, a blight on society, deserving of death. Now, I'm not saying the Daily Wire does that to leftists. I'm not saying that they cross the line from we should be, engaging in a culture war with them to we should literally be killing them. I don't think they cross that line. That's not my point. My point is it's the first step towards doing that sort of thing. And I've learned something recently doing an experiment online where I don't try to defend my positions. I don't even really try to defend myself when I'm personally attacked. I hope you've seen that in my YouTube comments. I hope you've seen that when you've interacted with me in Facebook. I'm not doing it perfectly, but I've been trying to do it. And what I've noticed is when I ask more questions than I make statements, when I'm genuinely interested in other people, when I'm trying to understand the opposite point of view from my own and really understand why someone is that passionate about it, because I understand I'm passionate about what I think is right. They're passionate about what they think is right. So why do they think it's right? And the more that I try to understand that, the better response and reaction that I get. When I started to think that it was impossible to have a productive conversation online because anytime you disagree with someone, it tends to escalate 10x just instantaneously. It's like a little firebomb underneath the surface, and as soon as you ignite it, it just explodes into a bunch of hatred and you're completely wrong, and I can't believe you would think this way, and the memes start flying, and people get angry, or at least through the comments, it looks like people are angry. It's hard to tell people's tone, and people are much worse to other people online than they typically are in person or even on something like a video chat or on the phone, which is why when you're having good, difficult conversations, you should do that in person as much as you can. But online, I was starting to give up on the fact that it was possible for us to even have good conversations. And yet, by employing some of the principles of this book, how to influence and influence people, and basic principles of the Bible, honestly, basic principles of Christianity, treating others as you would want to be treated, treating others as human beings, not as representatives of an opposing ideology, I've really started to notice people opening up more to that. It's been really, really interesting. It's also been really refreshing to have good conversations online with people that I disagree with and come out feeling like they're actually a better person than I thought they were. Because they are. Almost always, the people that you are painting as your enemy are almost always better people than you think they are. They're almost always more interesting than you're giving them credit for, and they almost always have better reasons than you're willing to admit. So I would encourage you to engage. Speaking of engaging, on this particular post that Marcus Pittman put up, a couple of people engaged, and I thought the conversation that ensued was rather interesting. Dallas Jenkins, the creator of the Chosen series, which we'll get to eventually on this show, I'm sure, says being in a gay relationship isn't woke. Being a non-Christian isn't woke. Woke is when any of that is shoved down people's throats, used as a bully pulpit, or artificially forced into media or school or government. The Daily Wire is a political media company, not a religious one. Now, on this point, I actually really agree with what Dallas is saying there. What he's saying is that being woke is not the same thing as even engaging in conversations about things we disagree with. And I think that's really where I'm starting to have a problem with this polarization being drawn down the middle, is we're almost going the complete opposite direction, the way that other people have treated conservatives in the past by shutting us out of the conversation completely. We're starting to go that way, where anyone who disagrees with our conservative positions, we want them out of the conversation. We don't even want to hear what they have to say. We don't want to engage them as people because they're woke. We don't want anything to do with that. We don't want to be associated with that. And I think that's a mistake. I think shutting people out of the conversation, regardless of what their opinion is not American, it's not Christian, and it's not a good idea. Just fundamentally, logically, it's not a good idea to limit the voices that you're allowing yourself to hear, so that you have all of the information available to you, all of the data points, so you can make an actual informed decision and consider the fact that you might be wrong, at least in some point, and someone else may be right. I'm willing to admit that I've been wrong a ton of times, and I'm probably wrong about a lot of things that I think right now. And so going into every conversation with the mentality that they can teach you something, this person that I'm talking to, even though I disagree with them, they have the capacity within them to teach me something, even if I don't change my overarching idea or my overarching worldview underneath all of those things, but they can teach me something. And I can learn something from them, even if it is just to how to be a better person, even if it is just how to have a good conversation with someone that I disagree with. But oftentimes it's deeper than that. And shutting people out of the conversation simply because they disagree with you, or simply because you don't want to necessarily hear what they have to say because their point of view is not interesting to you, because it disagrees with your fundamental core beliefs, I think that's a bad idea. I don't think we should be doing that, and I don't think we should be categorizing everyone who disagrees with us as woke. Gabriel disagrees with me and says, as far as wokeness goes, it is a spectrum, and it starts by abandoning the Word of God as the standard for life. It took America a long time, but that's how we got here. And if we cannot see the play that is being run on us, well, the other team is going to score. Now, the problem that I have with this, as much as I do agree that when we abandon the Word of God as the standard for life, things go downhill. I agree with you on that, Gabriel, but where I disagree with that is the whole picture that you're painting of there being teams and there being people that are scoring. This whole internet culture of dunk on you and score a point and score a point, that's not how relationships work. That's not how life works. And I really don't want that to be how our culture works. But unfortunately, we're making it that way because we insist on making this us versus them. Why can't we work together and listen to everyone and agree to disagree on some things? Now, I have heard people recently, especially with the Roe v. Wade news, on both sides, say, if you disagree with me on this thing, there can be no agree to disagree. This means too much to me. This is too foundational of a belief for me. And I do think that there are points when we're allowed to say that. I do think that there are values that we do not have to necessarily entertain someone's opinion that goes against those values. I think we might be drawing those lines a little too fast and a little too strong and a little too often. But I do think that that ability to do that exists. What I think is happening is we're doing it, like I said, way too much. Everything is a line in the sand these days. Everything is, we can't go there because it's a slippery slope, because if we start going down there, everything's going to end up the way that it's already starting to end up. And, you know, we can't even listen to this. We can't even understand this person's point of view because it's too dangerous. This is too dangerous of a viewpoint for my value system and my value structure. And it comes across as really insecure. It comes across as really close-minded. It comes across as dehumanizing to say that they're all on one team. Marcus Pittman said it. They're not for us. The Daily Wire is not for us. Gabriel said it. It's them against us. They're on a team and they're going to score. We've seen this play being run. I don't think that mentality is helpful. I don't think it should be us versus them. I think what we should try to do more and more is understand why the people who have different opinions than us hold those opinions. Why the people who feel that being a gay parent is a important thing for them to do, why do they feel that way? What are the underlying belief systems that feed into that? And is it okay to be friends with someone like that? Is it okay for Jordan Peterson to be friends with Dave Rubin? Now, I want to transition the conversation just a bit because I want to end this video by just clarifying that I don't think that the Daily Wire intends to be woke, if you want to use that phraseology. I don't think that the Daily Wire is some kind of underhanded attempt to smuggle in wokeness in the back door, or liberal values in the back door. I don't think that's happening. And I'm going to prove that to you simply by something that's been happening concurrently with all of this, with Jordan Peterson and Dave Rubin's podcast dropping recently. This has been happening at the same time. About a week ago, Jordan Peterson got a Twitter strike and had a tweet deleted for violating the rules of hateful conduct for this tweet. Remember when pride was a sin and Ellen Page just had her breasts removed by a criminal physician? Now, you're not supposed to call Elliot Page Ellen Page, apparently, and you're not supposed to, I guess, talk about pride and sin and breasts being removed by a criminal physician, because all of that got categorized under the Twitter rules as hateful conduct and was struck. Now, here's what I find interesting about that. Jordan Peterson, clearly not on the same team with whoever's running Twitter, and you can say, you know, the liberals are running Twitter if you want to. The Daily Wire often says leftists own Twitter. Leftists run Twitter. That's why they were so happy when Elon Musk bought Twitter. But clearly, whoever wrote the rules for Twitter, Jordan Peterson's not on their side, because I didn't see anything hateful there. I just saw someone disagreeing with someone else. And that, again, that's my point, is we're drawing the line way too fast. This is hateful. You can't say that. We have to shut you up on both sides. We have to shut you up. You can't be part of the conversation. What you're saying is too dangerous. It's too offensive. That's what I think is the problem with our culture right now, is we keep shutting people up too fast. And so whoever wrote the rules for Twitter that makes the algorithm identify things that are hateful, Jordan Peterson's not on their side. He has offended them. He has crossed them. He's not on that team, okay? Now you say, well, but Dave Rubin is. Well, no, he's not, because Dave Rubin tweeted after that, "The insanity continues at Twitter. Jordan Peterson has been suspended for this tweet about Ellen Page. He just told me he will never delete the tweet, paging Elon Musk." And then he tries to share Jordan Peterson's tweet that got deleted, and Twitter hits him with a hateful conduct strike. Dave Rubin has been suspended for a hateful conduct strike. And so Dave Rubin is not on the side of whoever wrote the Twitter rules. Ben Shapiro says Rubin report has just now been suspended for posting news about Jordan Peterson's suspension, all because we're not allowed to mention that until 5 minutes ago, Elliot Page, who is very, very, very male, was a female actress named Ellen Page. So surprisingly, Ben Shapiro hasn't been flagged by the Twitter bots for that. So maybe the name wasn't what triggered it. Maybe it was the criminal physician part. Maybe it was pride and sin. Maybe it was breasts removed. I don't know what it was that triggered the Twitter bot. But Ben Shapiro hasn't been shut down. But then Newsweek reports that for sure Twitter has suspended Dave Rubin for sharing Jordan Peterson's Elliot Page tweet. So I don't think that as a platform, Daily Wire Plus has to necessarily 100% agree value-wise with every single piece of content that gets put on there by other creators. By definition, they're a platform. When I look on Netflix, I don't expect that everything on Netflix is going to adhere to the Netflix values. In fact, I hope that not everything does adhere to the Netflix values, because frankly, I don't care what the Netflix values are. I'm just there for good content, and I'm evaluating each piece of content independently. And I understand why people are somewhat upset about this, because the Daily Wire claims to be, a conservative media outlet, now a conservative content platform, but they are opening this up to other content creators who mostly align with the overall generic value structure of what the Daily Wire is trying to do. But I think we have all missed the point of what the Daily Wire actually is trying to do. And they said it during their Backstage Live event. They actually said it out loud. And if you weren't watching that, you may have missed it. But the whole point of what they're trying to do is get away from censorship. The whole point of what they're trying to do is create a platform where things are allowed to live in freedom. Things are allowed to be said. No one is closed out of the conversation. No one is eliminated from the public forum simply because they have a differing viewpoint. And so I actually think it's really good that Jordan Peterson and Dave Rubin are friends and can have these kinds of conversations. I don't have to agree with them. I don't have to agree with everything Jordan Peterson says, and I don't. I don't have to agree with everything Dave Rubin says, and I don't. I don't have to agree with everything Ben Shapiro says, and I don't. I don't agree with everyone 100% of the time, ever. It doesn't happen. I don't agree with anyone 100% of the time, ever. And so we don't have to say they're on the other team. No one's on a different team. There are no teams. Stop thinking that way. It's not helpful to think that way. Let's all get together and have good conversations with people represented from every viewpoint so that we can all grow as people. And let's be adults and let's talk it out. This has been The Daily Conversation.